Welcome back to the Georgia Show. We've got a lot of information as usual. Bill's been working hard, and he's back with us off assignment, and we're going to try to get through everything we have tonight. But Bill, that intro on a Wednesday night after all this drama going on, it's kind of surreal.
You really can't. Everything feels like an understatement compared to everything that's going on almost every day right now.
Yeah,
We're gonna take a look at some of the things that have happened in the last 48 hours, but I mean, it's getting to the point where it almost feels surreal. The more we find behind it, connections everywhere, and we're not even. I mean, shoot, we're 2.5 weeks into this.
And you know what, Bill, we were right. We've been right. I mean, we've been telling the truth for all 4 years now, and
that's true.
You know what? We're gonna pat ourselves on the back because we're gonna keep going. And if you want to know what's really going on and not the narrative, you can come to the Georgia Show or cdm.press. We're brought to you by the Georgia Record, georgiarecord.com. Please sign up for our no ad subscriptions. It's a big deal. We're getting a lot of interest there. Thank you, people. I know this because people are coming in. Hey, sometimes, and by the way, we don't have the best payment processor, I know, but we're kicked off everything else. So we're just lucky to have what we have because we've been debanked so many times because of our reporting that we're lucky to have a payment processor at all. So if you have a problem getting in, the CAPTCHA doesn't work or whatever, try another browser. That usually takes care of it. But we're getting a lot of interest, and I know that because people are coming in, asking questions. How do I sign up? How much is it? All of that stuff. So I know there's a lot of interest out there, and thank you. And we're working really hard on the sites. We're redoing almost all of them, making them cleaner, moving the ads around, and making it really trying to make it a better experience. This is on podcast. You can, if you don't like sitting in front of Rumble or hitting the show on time, you can put it in your car, turn it up 2 times the speed, which I like to do, and get everything you need to know in half the time. So that works for me. So go to any podcast provider. You can find the Georgia Show on there, along with all the CDM programs. And sign up for our Rumble, CDM1. And you know what? That's our no ad subscription. You can find it on the Georgia Record. Click there and you can follow the instructions. We're also on YouTube. We've been censored on YouTube for 4 years. We're back. So we're going to give it a try. We're sticking our toe in the water and see what happens. We're growing subscribers quickly, and thank you for that. But we want to be everywhere. And if they kick us off, they kick us off again. But you know what? We're going to try. We're going to give them a chance, just like we did X. I still think we're a little throttled on X, but we're going to continue to grow that as well. Bill, what do we have today?
Well, we're going to have a broad cross section. This is kind of like one of those 7-course dinners. We're going to talk about some of the things going on with the confirmations. We're going to talk about some of the things going on with the pushback on DOGE and the just bizarre reaction coming from certain members of Congress, and not just on one side of the aisle, too. There's some odd gyrations from a number of folks. We will look at some of the things that have gone on here in Georgia that we've reported on, but I want to make sure people understand it because I think that they bear more consideration than you can gather just from reading an article. So we'll build on what we published this week, and then foreshadow a couple more things that we'll probably report on later in the week. So plenty and kind of this interesting mix of nationwide plus what's going on here in Georgia.
As always, we bring you the local and the international global news that you need to know. So check out the Georgia Show. We'll be back Sunday at 2. But before we move on, we have a new product, Nucleo Boost, with John B. Wells, Caravan to Midnight, where he developed this to get all the building blocks of nutrition at the cellular level that you need. And I tell you what, I go 24/7. I pass out, late at night. I even beat my son. He usually goes to bed before me, and then I get up before him, and he's 23. So the way I do that is with the stamina from Nucleo Boost, and it really just gives you everything your body needs, and it's amazing. And the only problem I have is I have to cut my fingernails constantly because they're growing so fast. But I'm going to run a quick ad from John B. Wells.
Watching my friends gain more and more weight, and then eventually I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke, I mean, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this. But that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another. And I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mixed it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition. And sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
Sorry about that. So for our audio audience, cdmnutrition.com. Over to you, Bill. Let's get right into it.
Okay. So let's start with one notion. Let me kick it off this way. One of the things we saw last week was a focus on the money and where the money flow was going. But keep in mind, the money is going to various places for a purpose. And in some cases, it's going there to create the support for bad acts. In other words, people doing wrong things. And so now what we're beginning to see is a crossover between where money seemed to flow and something not correct that was done. Let's take a look at this first one. So now the report is now saying that U.S. aid money that we heard about all last week and was flowing and is flowing and has been flowing for many years to lots and lots and lots of incorrect places, unbeknownst to the American public. Now we find out that it had a role in apparently financing the Russia collusion hoax. It's Russia and Russia's got Trump under their thumb and all that junk that went on, for the first 2 years of his presidency. That was all made up. It was all made up by the FBI and others. But here's part of apparently how they paid for it. And I think we're going to see more of this as we go forward. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But we are just, I hesitate to even say we're cresting the peak of what we're going to learn out of all of this. I think we've got a lot more depth to get to. On some good notes, we have a new director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard.
Fantastic.
And I think people have gotten more comfortable with her. She actually was confirmed today, and they swore her in. I'd not seen this picture of her before, but I think I've made a new decision, and that is if she ever challenges me to an arm wrestling contest, the answer is no. But she has guns, and she has some guns. So yes. Just a very interesting person. I think she's going to kick some behind in the new position. RFK also made progress. He made it past what's called cloture vote, which means that they have gotten him out of committee, and now we can proceed with a vote on the floor. It does appear, as of the last that I heard, that this may require J.D. Vance to weigh in and place a tie-breaking vote on the floor of the Senate. But we trust that will go forward as well. And gosh, there's a lot of expectation around RFK taking the reins at HHS.
Yes.
Just a little while before the broadcast, this was brought out by Nick Sorter. Nick Sorter, we know well from his reporting going back to Lahaina and before. If you recall, he's been one of the folks that has been unafraid to get in the face of these politicians and ask the very difficult questions. We're going to show a couple of videos of things that he did this week to show that in action. But here's Pam Bondi announcing that based on their failure to enforce immigration law, she has placed charges against Governor Kathy Hochul and AG Letitia James in New York. Just an amazing set of circumstances. I mean, these people are, we've been, I guess, in some cases, hoping that justice would show up, and boy, it appears to be moving toward that. So, just
It sure does.
fascinating.
It sure does.
Unfortunately, because with the confirmation hearings going on, one of the things that happened was Mitch McConnell voted against Tulsi Gabbard's nomination, given his physical condition, which seems to be declining rapidly. He's had several falls and whacked his head and did other things. We're not perhaps surprised, but
He's
that yet again,
he's a placeholder. I mean, they're just keeping him there so they can vote how they want.
Now, one of the reasons that I brought this up is, remember, here's a picture of him, and we're going to see more pictures of these folks shaking hands with Zelensky over the past, going back almost 3 years now. And there's a message here. You're going to see commonality between the guys that are doing the right things, I think, and the guys that are doing things more like this. So we will watch that play out as we get into the coming days and weeks. Again, one of the other things that we're moving toward now is looking past just the money and looking at where it's going. Excuse me for just a moment. So J.B. Pritzker is now in the middle of this, and you will hear as we go forward more and more about the NGOs, again, non-governmental organizations. These can be PACs. These can be charity. They're supposed to be charitable organizations, or at least many of them call themselves that. But you remember we talked a few weeks ago about how many federal agencies there are. We had looked it up at that time, and I think there's 450 or so. So many agencies. But guess how many NGOs are in the United States? 1.5 million.
Are you kidding me? Wow.
No, we checked it before the broadcast. And
that's
so
a whole ecosystem, Bill. I mean, they live a whole different way.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you'll see to make this even more complex as we get into it, you will see, as we did on the last broadcast, you'll see that they trade money back and forth regularly. So $1, if you just want to picture a dollar moving through the system, it might land in 4, 5, 10, 15 different NGOs by the time it lands where it's going to end up and is actually spent.
Right.
It is fascinating to watch the flow. So
it's money laundering, but you know what? AI can take care of that.
We hope so. Yeah. It is fascinating to watch Elon and his team work through this. And it's no surprise, perhaps, that some of the folks that he's using are they're not, I won't call them usual workers in technology. They have very special talents, some of which are very unique to their way of thinking. And so they're able to spot and look for patterns and other things that aren't easy to find, especially if you've been educated in a traditional way, I guess is the way to put it. Yeah. So anyways, 64 NGOs associated with Pritzker's family, and many of them getting, in one form or another, money, millions of dollars. And so there's lots of concern there.
I mean, what we've discovered is just a vast network of nonprofits that are getting funded illegally by our tax dollars with no controls whatsoever. And it's just they're with both hands just taking all day long. $1 billion a day.
One of the things we're going to find, unfortunately, is that this will also wrap in, I believe, some organizations that we have been taught to trust deeply. And so we're going to have to take the data. Folks can review it. Pardon me. And make their own decisions, but we're going to report it as we find it.
Well, that's going to be eye-opening, to say the least. So I know you're going to stay on this story, and we will across CDM, and it's happening not just in Georgia but everywhere. So it's a new way of existence for the left. I mean, they couldn't compete in the real world, they couldn't compete in the commercial world, so they just essentially set up this fake world where they get fake money. It's real money, but they don't work for it, and they survive that way through fraud, and they've normalized it, and everybody thinks it's fine.
Yeah. One thing that I'll expand on with Pritzker before we move on is you can actually people are learning how to track contributions and money flow even at a personal level. This is kind of interesting. Pritzker, under using a couple different names, has donated very significant money to apparently Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, and organizations that are set up to support him and in that ilk in Pennsylvania. There has been a report of a past Pennsylvania state trooper, I believe, or state police employee coming forward with charges with regard to Josh Shapiro. We're not going to jump out in front of that because we want to make sure that that's been fully vetted and that we know the facts around it. But there does seem to be something there. It's one of those things where, well, when you smell smoke, it usually means fire. Well, maybe, but we'll have more on that shortly. The other thing that I wanted to share, and I mentioned it to you, is the reaction has been just volatile to all this work that's going on with Elon. Everybody's charging him with, we can't have an unelected official going around and doing this. Well, guess what? The government has had thousands of unelected officials running rampant, doing whatever they want. They're called the SES, the Senior Executive Service.
Well, what do you think the frickin' Federal Reserve is? They're not even government. They're handling all the money of the
exactly
nation.
Right. Exactly right.
They're owned by a bunch of private banks.
So it is funny to watch Congress themselves argue against this. I wanted to show just a few minutes of Susie arguing this with a group trying to challenge them in terms of Elon's work. We'll hear just a couple of minutes of this, and then I want to show you some things that happened very directly in result of the things that are coming out.
Come to work for the federal government. If you're a cabinet official, you have to go through these big hearings. A lot of people have to go through background checks. A lot of people have to go through security checks. They get security clearance. What kind of background checks or transparency into the background of Mr. Musk or the people that are working for him has been done? Do you know, Mr. Dubois?
I don't know the background checks. I know President Trump had an electoral mandate to create DOGE.
No, I understand that. But he has his electoral mandate to hire cabinet officials, but they have to go through hearings and things like that. Mr. Sepp, do you know how these people were vetted?
No.
Mr. Lodwood, do you know how they were vetted?
No.
Ms. Kochelicek, do you know how they were vetted?
We have not looked at these specific individuals.
Ms. Olson, do you know how they were vetted?
No.
What kind of access does Mr. Musk and his team have? What kind of changes have they been making to the computer programs? How many of those changes to
It's just about comedic to hear him complaining about this stuff when they've found as much fraud, and people, I believe, I hope, I trust, are spotting this for exactly what it is. But we kind of wanted to call this section Doge Bites because that's what I think this feels like to these guys. They're getting bitten, where their pocketbook is, and they realize it, and they're in blue panic. Here's going back to Nick Sorter, who we mentioned earlier. He's very willing to get out in front of some of these folks and really challenge them in terms of their standing and what they've done and not done. Here's him chasing down one of the folks from Congress after they take the time to make incorrect statements about what's being accomplished through DOGE.
Congressman, what do you have to say about the fact that FEMA just spent $59 million housing illegal immigrants while people in Western North Carolina lived in tents for the past 4 months? What do you have to say about that? Do you accept that? Do you accept that? Do you accept the fact that because DOGE exposed that today, it sounds like you have a big problem with the fact that DOGE. I'm not blocking her. I'm not blocking. Excuse me. Are you okay with that? Do you condemn the fact that DOGE exposed FEMA for sending $59 million to house illegal immigrants today?
Excuse me, sir.
Do you condone that?
Excuse me, sir.
I don't know who the
I don't know who. I tell you what. If I don't know who you are. Let's go. You're in the way.
I'm not in the way.
You are in the way.
Okay, then get out of my way. Oh, what's that? What's that look? What's that look?
What's that look? Again, you may recall Nick Sorder's the gentleman that when he asked certain questions out in Lahaina, the cops that didn't want to answer the questions put him in a headlock and
Yeah, I
took him
remember
down to
that.
the ground.
Yeah.
So a courageous guy. One of my favorites this week is this one with.
By the way, I
Elizabeth
want to
Warren.
know what happened at Lahaina, so Trump could help us out there, and Las Vegas.
I think we will know before this is done. I think we're going to know more than we think we have capacity to learn. Elizabeth Warren was also one of the folks that he attempted to get a statement from. Two things here. One, you'll recall that Warren, like the rest of Congress, has a salary that's I think it's a little bit below $200,000 per year. Yet she's worth a lot of money, a whole bunch of millions. And even though she and Bernie Sanders and others claim, oh, no, I'm not taking any corporate contributions, the money's coming from somewhere. And these people just don't, they won't even say a word about this.
Yeah.
They don't want to say a word. So I have to show this one. This is fascinating.
So Senator Warren, why are you so afraid of transparency? Why are you bothered by the fact that Elon Musk is attempting to expose all of this fraudulent spending? What is that about? What is the problem here? What is the problem with transparency? Do not touch me. Do not touch me. Senator Warren, I just want to answer a question. How did you get a $12 million net worth on a $200,000 salary in Congress? How did you do that?
Excuse me.
How did you do that? You can keep trying to block my camera. We're on a public sidewalk, so get off of me. So you don't want to answer that question. What is it about DOGE that's such a problem to you? You just elbowed me, Senator. I got that on camera.
Excuse us. Thank you.
Transparency is your enemy.
Wow, I love it, man. It just
gets wacky, doesn't it? And you'll see some techniques here. And I recall that we saw a little bit of this when you and I were up in Washington, although it wasn't nearly this contentious. But what they do is when these folks don't want to be asked these kind of questions, one, they move fast. Two, they've got blockers out in front. You saw the one guy pushing Nick Sorder out of the way in the first video. In this one, there's two or three people that are out front trying to do several things, like hold up a sign and get it in front of the camera so they're not able to film anything. Trying to interrupt so you can't hear what is said or isn't said. It really is fascinating.
So before we move on, Bill, I want to pay some bills real quick. If you go to twc.health/CDM, you can check out what the wellness company has to offer. Let me bring that up real quick. This is the spike support formula. Actually, it's the ultimate spike detox. If you have somebody who took the vax, there's autoimmune issues, there's heart issues, there's skin issues, there's all kind of things that spike protein does. This will detox your loved one over a period of months. So you can go to the wellness company, twc.health/CDM, promo code CDM, and get 10% off and take care of your loved one, take care of your family. And you can also get their emergency medical kits like this one. This is the contagion kit, which has the nebulizer in it for bird flu or whatever is coming down the pike. You can get all the drugs that you need. So if something happens, you don't have to go to the pharmacy. The pharmacy could be closed, could be crime going on there, could be immigrants, outside, whatever. You just call up the wellness company online. You get a doctor on the video. He tells you what drugs to take. You got them in your house. So prepare for your family. twc.health/CDM, promo code CDM. Thanks, Bill. Back to you.
You bet. Sorry for the coughing. I feel like I might have a touch of bird flu myself. I have I have a nasty tendency to want to lean over and peck seed off the ground or something.
Well, we're both burning the candle at both ends here. So
So I thought I'd post this, which Trump put out. This is what's really happening with DOGE. They have found incredible amounts of fraud, theft, incompetence, and abuse. I mean, the incompetence thing is maybe there's a bit of that in there, but this almost to a dollar seems to be created to do exactly what it's doing, which is taking money away from the American public, spending it all over the world, spending it on media to create narratives that the bad guys, whoever the bad guys may encompass, want out there, and to pay off people to make all this happen. It's truly
You
amazing.
know, I was talking with John Ritchie on Output today, and in my view, if you look at this from the 30,000 foot level, you have an just outrageous attempt to loot the treasury and take with both hands as much as you can, steal the wealth of the American people, while at the same time depopulating them. I mean, you know, killing them essentially, and making the rest serfs. So, you know, if you look at this from a macro level, it's really, really, really dark. And I think they wanted to take down the country, steal the wealth, and kill half of us, and make the rest slaves. But you know, that's just me.
That may be the way these pieces fit together. Earlier, I said we take a look at something, and here it is. So this I believe is actually pretty close to true. This is what we've seen so far, and it may not even be as much as this, but I do think that we're going to see a whole lot more, and it's because in part of some of the connections that until you get into something, you actually don't see how the connections work. And let's use an example here. So we all heard the story of FEMA, who has been reticent to spend the amount of money necessary to help the folks in North Carolina. But then we find out that last week they went against Trump's direct instructions and spent $59 million to house illegals in luxury hotels. And let's see here. So it turns out Kristi Noem was able to claw back that $59 million. Okay.
I saw that today. That's fantastic.
Well, what is interesting is, who did she claw it back from? Well, here's a further description of what she found. The funding was in part going to the Roosevelt Hotel, that actually is serving or has served as the Trinidad base of operations. And actually, Laken Riley's killer was known to have stayed there at one point.
Yeah.
Further, if you dig deeper into the background of that hotel, it was actually sold back in the 90s to something called Pakistan, I think it's International Airlines, which is really just a company. And the city of New York leased the hotel back 3 years ago in order to house illegal immigrants. So ultimately, the money flow, if you will, is essentially going to Pakistan, or Pakistani company, ultimately. New York, I think it's a little small on the screen for us to read, but I think it was $220 million to rent the hotel and then put illegals in there. But you can begin to see that this isn't just one crime. This is a bunch of crimes layered on top of one another, and that's where it gets
combine that with foreign infiltration. I mean,
that's right.
You know, it's crimes, but they don't care because it's unrestricted warfare in many ways.
That's right. So now, as we go through this, I think we're going to see more and more of this. You know, one thing leads to two more, leads to five more, and that's one of the reasons that iceberg we showed gets so darn big as we go forward. Okay, let's see. Any other questions on all of that before we move on to Georgia?
No. Why don't we? On that note, let's run an ad from David Cross. He's our financial advisor, and a lot of people have things in their life when their lifestyle changes or something happens, and you need advice. You got a pot of money. What do you do with it? Talk to David. He's our guy at U.S. Asset Management.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
You know, Bill, I used to be in that business, and it's really important. There's a lot of shysters. David is not a shyster. You can trust him. You can talk. Just call. You know, you don't have to give him your money right away. You can just have an easy conversation. These are my concerns. He'll point you in the right direction, and I know for a fact he'll help you and do the right thing. So even if he doesn't make money from it. So that's really important in that business. So give David a call if you have. Yeah.
And especially now where people are, in some cases, they're a little panicky and they could be
Right.
somebody else might misguide them into making a decision that might not be quite as good for them.
So if you have a death in the family, I just had one. There's probate. There's all kind of issues that you need to deal with. Sale of a business, or a lot. You retire. A lot of different things. You have a 401k. What do I do with it? Talk to David.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's great about David's business is he has background in a number of different key things with regard to people's lives, and almost all of those create the opportunity or challenge to make the right decisions. And
right,
so
exactly.
they're great at that. All right, so let's move on to something to do with Georgia. We reported in the Georgia Record this week that there was talk coming to us from various sources that suggested that after the debacle in January regarding Colton Moore, his being thrown to the floor to keep him from entering the House chamber, the things that have happened since then, the lack of apology from Jon Burns and other things, the story is that behind the scenes, Burns seems to be playing defense. Well, if you're a politician, how do you play defense? Well, you try to replace people's perception of something bad with their perception of something good, or maybe multiple somethings good. And so we noted that when Trump signed the Lake and Riley bill, all of a sudden, Jon Burns and a subsection of the House are claiming to beat feet up to Washington so they can be part of it, and seemingly take some sort of credit for the Lake and Riley bill being signed. Now we absolutely believe that the steps taken by Trump in getting this bill and getting it signed and setting it up to protect people against violent crime by illegal immigrants is necessary and the right thing to do. What we're pointing out is, did Burns do anything about this? And did do anything to drive it? Well, let's go back to when we first learned about actual trafficking coming into Georgia. Senator Colton Moore had gone to Hartsfield Airport, gotten a tip off that something was happening, filmed it, got assaulted filming it. He then went on the floor of the Senate chamber, reported what had happened, showed the video, shared the video publicly. And yet, what happened with the members of the Senate? Nada. What happened with the members of the House, including Jon Burns? Nothing. And ironically, looking back in time, Senator Moore found this happening on February 4th of last year. And tragically, it was February 22nd, less than a month later, when Lake and Riley lost her life. So the question becomes, why would somebody sit back knowing about this and in a position to take action, do nothing? And yet, when Trump is taking action, finally, God bless him, you go running up to, get your 15 minutes of fame and try to associate with it. Did he do anything that helped this? I don't know. But it is notable. And then, believe it or not, the following week, there is an executive order signed called the No Men in Women's Sports bill or executive order. He goes running back up to Washington again to make it sound as if he was part of pushing that forward. Now, here we've got a little bit different story, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Gets a picture with Riley Gaines, tries to make sure that this is visible on Twitter. But did he really have anything to do with getting the executive order in place? Well, it's a little bit of an unusual story. He very quickly came back and then talks about, we're going to push a Riley Gaines bill or Riley Gaines Act here in Georgia. Well, what we learned from folks that have tracked this now for some period of time is that, I'll come back to that in just a minute, is that there was actually a bill already in play last year that would have prevented males from being allowed to participate in female sports. And guess who? It went back and forth. It was started in the House. It went to the Senate, came back to the House. And guess who did not allow it to progress at the end of the legislative session?
Fascinating.
There you go. This was in Bill 1104 last year. No local school system, public school, or participating private school in this state shall operate interscholastic athletics that permit a person whose sex is male but whose gender identity is female to participate in any interscholastic athletics that are designated for females. Would have stopped it last year.
Yeah.
And yet he blocked it so it couldn't get done.
You know, and I have a daughter who's a high school athlete, lacrosse, and it's a brutal sport, and big males can do long-term life-altering damage to young girls. So
we just saw the replay of, I guess it's like a some sort of pugilistic fight between a female and a male earlier this week on Twitter, and it's just there's no contest. It's really they're different, and they're different for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So that bill was 1104. It was introduced last year in the House by Brent Cox. And as I said, it went through several iterations, but then ultimately did not get completed. And it didn't get completed because it was stuck with Jon Burns. One more thing, when we talk about this whole notion of trans versus non-trans, natural gender, I guess you might call it. I'm not sure what the term is these days. But think back to last year. Surprisingly, Jon Burns allowed a transgender born male, now identifying as a female, to speak during their morning invocation. Each morning there's an invocation by a person of faith, and on one day he allows this person to say the invocation for the House chamber. Then he's going out saying, what he needs to look good in front of the Riley Gaines initiative.
Yeah.
This stuff doesn't add up. So one of the things we wanted to know was, well, if he ran to Washington twice, how did he get up there? These things are not super easy to organize. And so we sent an open records request to several members of his staff and asked for information regarding his invitation to the White House. He should have an invitation, would have been sent to him. How did he travel? What carrier did he use? Was it a regular jet? Did he charter a jet? Did he, charter a private jet? What happened? How much did this all cost? The response we got essentially says that Jon Burns and other members of the General Assembly are immune, or they're not required to answer open records questions.
Isn't that special?
Well, it seemed to me, a little odd, because this would be a simple thing to answer, and we're not asking for devastating information here, but, you would think that if there's nothing to hide, there's nothing to hide. But they rely on this statement to say, well, we don't have to answer this. So what's really going on here? We don't fully know. I don't think we're relying on what we hope to be good things, and we do believe that the steps being taken by Trump and by Georgia's Senate and a bill like that would be of benefit to Georgians. So we do support that. But it's at the same time, it appears to be that the circumstances are potentially being used, according to some of the sources we're hearing from, that Mr. Burns is trying to get himself back in good graces, very frankly.
Well,
and I think that everything that we've talked about for these last month is, unfortunately, it's being heard and people are understanding now, and I think he's reacting to it.
I was just going to say, think of the arrogance for a legislature to, make themselves immune from open records requests. I mean, the only reason you would do that is if you plan to continue doing things which people, obviously won't like, your constituents won't like, so you don't want anybody to know about it. I mean, that's the only reason you would do that, right?
I'm sure they've come up with other reasons that, that they would try to tell you, oh, it's to prevent, something over here. For example, they enacted a law that says you can't be arrested on Capitol property. or en route to a legislative session. Well, they violated that, apparently, it appears, by having Colton Moore arrested. But the reason they explained that last year was, well, if you wanted to prevent a vote from going a particular way, if you had some of the legislators arrested for contrived means or contrived reasons, you could keep those votes from reaching the floor. Does it sound plausible? I don't know. But isn't it funny that they take time to think up these rules, these answers, if you will, and then enact them? And ultimately, who doesn't have the information? And especially with what we're now hearing about, the declassification project to be led by Anna Paulina Luna, which was announced yesterday. She and a group of other legislators will have responsibility for making sure that the things Trump has promised to release, in fact, do get released. And Kash Patel doubled that up today. He said certain things would be released from the FBI the same day that he is confirmed and takes his seat at the FBI. Okay, so again, it goes back to the same sort of thing. When you see secrets, when you see things hidden, they're being hidden for a reason, and you probably are not going to like the reasons that they're being hidden.
Yeah, it's just amazing. Just amazing.
Shall we take one more break before we move on?
One of the things we talk about resilience all the time here, and one of the areas is financial resilience. And if you have a portfolio of, I don't know if you follow the financial markets, but the gold markets are going crazy right now. There's a huge shortage of gold. Why is that? Because people are expecting, we interviewed Ed Dowd recently from Finance Technologies, ex-BlackRock portfolio manager, and everyone is expecting some pain before the Trump results kick in and the nation goes forward. So is your portfolio protected? One of the ways you can do that was a long-term store of value with precious metals, which are hitting all-time highs and likely will go much higher as we do experience some financial pain in the markets. So I'm just going to run this real quick.
If you haven't noticed, gold has reached a new high, all-time highs actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, you're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our cdm.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it, fill out the form for your contact info, and Ira Bishotsky will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and IRA. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your portfolio because you really need to. It's coming. Thank you.
So for our audio audience, go to cdmmetals.com and you can find out all the information. You get your free precious metals investing guide there from Advisor Metals. Just fill out the form. Go to cdmmetals.com, fill out the form. It's just contact information, and you can have a very easy conversation with them. I can guarantee you there's no sales pitch. I don't like that. And it's just a conversation, just like with David Cross. So take care of your portfolio. Back to you, Bill.
Okay, very good. Bear with me for just a moment. I'm pulling up one more video I'd like to be able to show in a couple of minutes. So let's move on to the next thing. In the last couple of shows, we talked about this magical tort reform legislation that Kemp all of a sudden put on the table, and everybody, all the insiders appear to be backing. We showed the picture of everybody gathered in this huge crowd in the atrium to hear the announcement, most of which are staffers, their families, lobbyists, and people that are beholden to the process. That's who showed up. You weren't seeing people from the public going, "Hey, me and my family really want tort reform," Yeah. And so, not surprisingly, one of the senators stood up to back this legislation, and John F. Kennedy. Now, you recall that we also reported on this Peach State Values debacle and that PAC working against Georgia grassroots Republican candidates. Yet they're being funded by Republican leadership, in fact. And there's 3 people that are shown as the officers of something called the Georgia Republican Senatorial Committee. One of those is John F. Kennedy. So here he is coming out saying, "Oh, I'm excited to back the tort reform package." Well, remember, we showed that this is tied directly into an initiative, and it's actually nationwide, we believe now, to enact tort reform. And it's not to protect consumers, although the PAC that's behind it, one of them, says protecting American consumers together, PACT. They're not protecting American consumers. They're protecting the insurance defense lobbyists, and they're protecting the insurance companies. That's who's afraid of what may be coming with, let's say we find out that, in fact, people have been harmed by something they've taken over the last 3 years. What can you imagine about the number of insurance claims that might create? What if people are suffering terrible healthcare outcomes because of something that they had done to them over the last 3 years? So all of that bears consideration. So we were not surprised to see Kennedy come out and support this. He's one of the ones that we would kind of expect. What we were surprised with was that even someone I believe is from more mainstream media also had questions surrounding this tort reform initiative and called it out for a different reason. Cody Alcorn, who I believe is a local media personality, talks about the fact that there are concerns regarding this legislation because it might make it harder for those who are victims of sex trafficking and are survivors to be able to seek justice. And folks are focused on that. Now, isn't that interesting? We hadn't even gotten to that level of looking at this, but it does appear to be a valid concern. So we will have more on this on the Georgia Record, but we recommend, folks, look at our reporting from last week regarding Kemp's almost sounds urgent proposal for tort reform. And note that it was literally just days after he returned from the World Economic Forum Davos meeting and had traveled and met with people even up into Poland, is my understanding. Why would this, coming back from a meeting like that, why would this be so critical?
It's almost too transparent. It's like, I don't know. You would think they'd have better foresight, and maybe it's just panic. I don't know, but
well, I think it's a combination of things. We mentioned that one of RFK's initiatives is to undo the immunity that is placed on vaccine providers since the 80s, because it doesn't seem, the efficacy of the vaccines is now being called deeply into question when you look at folks that don't receive vaccines versus the health outcomes of those who do. And 2, the fact that those legal immunities might go away, I think has a lot of people that didn't have to worry about it before now having to worry about it. And so we'll see, but this, we believe, may be quite important before we're done.
Yeah, I think you're right. And obviously we're going to stay on this, but we'll see about JFK or RFK tomorrow. That's going to be a biggie. Hopefully that goes through. And then we got Kash Patel, which they got 48 months in this administration. They're trying to chop off as many months of Kash as being in the hot seat as possible.
That's true. Okay, and again, I'm sorry for the coughs, but this is just one of those things we got to deal with. Maybe I'll be one of those folks looking to make sure that we don't have problem with insurance claims.
Yeah.
I'm going to start this next segment with something that was said 2 years ago by the CEO of Dominion Voting Systems. Jon Burns spoke via Zoom meeting or teleconference to and during a state election board meeting. And I'm not going to play everything because it was about a half an hour, 40-minute teleconference. But he made one particular statement that is so instructive to those who, have struggled to grasp the meaning of why is it so important that we don't have to rely on the systems. We need to go back to paper ballots. And Jon actually said it to us directly during that meeting. I was actually in the room when he was on teleconference. Here it is.
Actually, the easiest thing in the world to double check. You pull out the paper ballots, the voter verified paper ballots, which is always the official part of the election. Those are the official results. Those are what can't be hacked. And you hand count them to verify the count of the tabulator.
One more time in a few minutes, we may play that, but listen to what he said. The tabulators are so easy to confirm. You take out, to confirm their counts, you take out the paper ballots from the bottom of the tabulator and you hand count those, the paper ballots.
Yeah.
Those are the part that can't be hacked. Those are the official part of the election.
Amazing.
Those are his words.
And there's been, I forget who put it out. Maybe it was David Clements or somebody that there was, in the last few hours or days, verification from Dominion that, yes, they're connected to the internet.
Oh, yes.
So, so it's just fascinating.
Yeah, we had seen proof of that quite some time ago. And when you go into certain election offices, there's a router sitting on the back wall, and they finally gave up trying to say, no, they're not on the internet, even though I have Kemp on, on tape saying that. The basis of the story, though, is a little bit different. And that is, again, there seems to be a game similar to what we talked about with Jon Burns. He seems to be playing defense, trying to improve the public's view of him and his choices. There seems to be something odd going on with this gentleman. He's the chairman of the state election board. His name is Jon, I believe it's pronounced Fervier. And he was put in place about a year ago and assigned to be the chairman by Brian Kemp.
He's the Waffle House guy, right?
He is the Waffle House guy. And of this, at the time, people were hoping, gosh, maybe we got somebody good. And, there was talk that, it wasn't just going to be one member of the state election board that kept standing up for the right things through all of this. And maybe we'd be able to get something done. Well, unfortunately, now that appears not to be the case. Many folks are coming out saying now that we are back to seemingly not making much progress. And a lot of the reasons for that seem to be stemming from decisions and choices made by this man, Mr. Fervier himself, as chairman of the state election board. Here's some comments from Kevin Moncla, who we've had on in the past, but is well known as being an election integrity advocate, a great analyst, and so forth. And he calls out these things that Fervier is failing to do. He's failing to hold monthly meetings. Why would you do that? If we want to get things done, you have to be able to meet and get investigators involved and come to closure on the various complaints and other things. He's refused to post certain meetings so the public doesn't know sometimes things are happening. The last two times that I went, they had implemented some sort of a strange ticketing policy where you had to have a ticket in order to get into the main room. That had never been done ever before, but they did it in apparently to keep certain people from being able to get into the main room, so that either one, we couldn't report on it, or two, people wouldn't be able to make certain statements that they don't find that they like. Why would he be doing these things? There is a set of talk from sources that are wrapped around this, both in the public and in other functions, that it almost seems as if he's trying to make it appear that the state election board is not doing a very good job, so that it opens the door, potentially, this is other people's conjecture, for other entities to step in and take a stronger role in what decisions are being done with regard to the elections. Is that have to do with the fact he was appointed by Brian Kemp? Is it because there seems to be a connection between what's going on in the Secretary of State's office? One of the unusual reports seems to indicate that the Secretary of State is trying to somehow tip press off. Not us, unfortunately, but other press, AJC kind of press, and set them up so that they can report certain things that perhaps the Secretary of State wants reported. We don't know how this is going to play out, but we wanted to bring it forward because, again, we think shining a light on this is the right way to go.
Well, this is a big area for us at CDM, at the Georgia Record, and all of our local papers, is election integrity and election fraud. And, this is something Trump has promised to take care of. He was impacted by it. I want to see some action. And I want to see, if we don't get it, we're going to have to make a big stink and a loud noise, because this is the root cause of everything. And allowing them to do all this other stuff are the elections. So we got to stay on this in Georgia specifically.
Well, I think we are beginning, and maybe more than beginning, to make a big stink and a loud noise. And I know a number of folks are using every means they can to make sure that folks in the Trump camp have access to this information and are aware that there's dozens, hundreds of people working on the various aspects of election integrity all over Georgia. We know the problem is not solved. You can see it. Trump only won the state by 115,000 or so votes. That is way below what people would have expected.
Yeah.
And astoundingly, half of those appear to have come from one county. None of that makes sense.
There's a lot of down ballot stuff that looks really fake as well.
Down ballot looks wrong. So you add it all up, and we are not beyond this problem. People are not giving up. God bless them. And we and others will stay on this. We do hope that folks in the Trump camp are paying attention. We believe they are. And we believe that at the correct time, we will see guidance, perhaps help. We don't know, but my trust is in Trump and his camp. I think that they're letting us do what we need to at this stage, and when the right time comes, we will see help where help is needed.
I hope you're right. We're going to stay on it and make sure we're the squeaky wheel. So we will see. But I hope you're right. I think you're right. But we're going to stay on it across the board, across the country.
That's right.
That's all I got, Bill, unless you got anything else.
No, that's it. We will see folks again on Sunday afternoon at 2. And if we have other dramatic things happen within the week, then we'll pop in either a special or a summary and try to keep people up to speed.
Yeah.
Pay attention. By the way, if you're not on Twitter, when I found a couple of people this week that were not, please get on Twitter. It's won't harm you. They're not going to do bad things to you. But boy, oh boy, Twitter is, I believe right now, the battlefield. You will learn more faster on Twitter than just about anywhere else. Hopefully that will migrate over to Truth Social as they get even more broad. But Twitter is one of the places I would recommend many people be.
And we're on YouTube. Don't forget. So follow, subscribe there. If you'd rather be on YouTube, we're not set up to live stream there yet because there's some hoops we got to jump through. But the shows will be uploaded quickly. And we are going to be at CPAC. And I think Bill's going to be there too. And we're working on the paperwork, but we're going to have a big team there, be live streaming the show there. So please, if you're there, come by and say hello. But check out all the content we're going to be putting out, as we always do at CPAC, a lot of different interviews with interesting people. And check us out if you want to get your daily intel brief, 10 to noon daily, Monday through Friday, 10 to noon Eastern, myself and John Ritchie on Output. We're streaming everywhere across CDM for that. And all of our other shows, check out CDTV. So that's all I got, Bill. Thank you.
That's great. We'll see you all next time.